Okay, so you want to know how to get faster render times inside of Cinema 4D. Maybe your computer isn't one of the best on the market, maybe you've not got the best specs, maybe your projects are too intense for your computer, which is likewise with me, and I'm going to show you how you can overcome that pretty fast. So jumping into my cure sniping scene here, this is more of an intense scene in comparison to one like this on screen now, which is much simpler, and you can see why it would render faster as to one like this. So looking at this scene here, what is impacting our render is our Nitroblast and our Ivy. Now, these things are using a lot of polygons, a lot of segments, and that is what is impacting it. So if we go into the render settings here, I'll make that full screen. You can see here they're not overwhelming, but how did I get it to look photorealistic? As explained in my last tutorial, my lighting, how I position my cameras, the textures I use, it's not all in the quality of your render. So on output, typically this would be 1920 by 1080. This time I went 1280 by 720, but make sure I had it in a higher bit channel. Resolution would usually be about 300, and frame rate would be 25 or 30, occasionally 60. If your render times are big for a scene like this, you can see 1280 by 720, and maybe stick that to 100 just to get a more sharper image. I think that was 100 actually when I rendered it, just to get a nicer output. You're not going to see much of a difference. And then anti-aliasing, not overly important, I would say. It is on images if you're doing still renders. This is all in my opinion. I don't often use it. I don't see the impact of it unless we go into best and we do something like 8 by 8 like that. That's when I see it, and that drastically destroys your render times. And I had ambient occlusion turned on, and here's something that will decrease your render times is your maximum ray length. Turn that down to about 35, your render times will just fucking plummet. It's amazing. Try it, you don't notice a thing, it's amazing. Also, into options, your ray depth, put that about 9 or 8 or 9, won't notice a thing. That's another brilliant thing. Reflection depth, maybe go 4, 3 at push, and shadow depth also, you can turn that down. These three things here, brilliant to decrease your render times. Global illumination, not necessary unless you're using illuminant materials to light your scene. Don't use that just because you think it makes it better. It doesn't, okay? Not unless you're using, well, it's self-explanatory, global illumination. So, looking at those render settings, let's do a quick render. Okay, so that render took 1 minute and 8 seconds. Not long at all, is it? For a scene like that, you would not expect 1 minute and 80 seconds. My computer is not a fucking transformer. I have a GTX 780, I have an i5 quad core, and I have 8 gigabytes of RAM. I am saving to upgrade that at the minute, because, you know, when your work gets better, well, it's kind of reverse to that. When your computer gets better, your work gets better. So, copy those render settings and use them. And if your computer is still not able to handle that, try doing things like closing down background applications, close all your Google tabs, eliminate Skype, eliminate Steam, prioritize it on your task manager. You've got to make sure that your computer is putting everything into Cinema 4D. Do not be rendering and have 9 tabs open and watching like an hour-long YouTube video on one of them while on a call on Skype. Skype calls actually do impact your render, because of what Cinema 4D uses to render your CPU. So make sure you minimize all these things and make sure your computer is focusing on Cinema 4D, and you will get excellent results really fast. These are not my exact render settings for this project. It was, I believe, about 2.5 minutes per frame. But you can see if you look at that in the finished intro, obviously that had post compositing on it, but you can't see much of a difference, and that's such an easy way to get around it. There you go. That is how you increase your render times. And